I'm a defective Omega. Scheming since childhood and broke beyond belief. I deceived a wealthy alpha heir into falling for me. As soon as I got the money, I made a clean break, only to find out I'd brought a baby back with me to the lower district. When he found out, the alpha looked at me coldly and said, "The child is mine. Once you give birth, you can get lost." 1. Hot breaths nearly devoured me as Frank pressed me against the glass door. My palms were braced against it, making a squeaking sound from the friction. Tears welled up in the corners of my eyes, only to be swallowed by his kisses. "You're such a good boy," he whispered. I shivered. He laughed, his sharp canines grazing my scent gland, sending jolts through my nerves. His pheromones overwhelmed me, almost drowning my senses. He lifted my soaked body into his arms. And at that moment, I stopped breathing, then jolted awake from the dream. Sitting up with my hands clutching my stomach, I wiped the sweat from my forehead. Damn it. Another dream like that. I changed into a clean pair of pants and went to the bathroom to wash the ones I'd soaked in my sleep. I live in a tiny one-bedroom, one-bathroom apartment. Maybe just 20 or 30 square meters in total. It's small, but more than enough for me alone. This is the lower district. The living conditions here are rough, most buildings are old and run down. Compared to the upper district, calling it a slum wouldn't be an exaggeration. The security's terrible, too. Even in the middle of the night, you can hear shouting outside. I haven't been back here in a long time. Even though I'm an Omega, I used to walk these streets like I owned them. But not anymore. Things have gotten worse. And my current situation makes it even harder. Even wearing a baggy t-shirt, I can't hide the bump that's beginning to show. I sat at the edge of the bed, my mood restless. It's been 4 or 5 months since I came back. I hadn't let myself think about Frank on purpose. But in the quiet of the night, memories of being with him still haunt me like a craving. Back then, he had me in tears. Now, thinking about it, it wasn't exactly great. But somehow, it still doesn't feel like enough. Damn it. I'm going insane. I miss his scent, his gentle coaxing voice, his fierce, rough dominance. Everything about him. The more I think about it, the more irritated I get. Sometimes, I even feel like crying, and I know that's not normal. The next morning, I threw on an oversized coat and went to the neighborhood clinic. The clinic doctor is a handsome alpha named Henry. When he saw me, he immediately put down what he was doing and led me into the lounge. "What's wrong? Not feeling well?" he asked. I hesitated, finding it hard to speak. "Dr. Henry, my emotions have been kind of unstable lately. I don't think it's because I'm still in love with Frank, or that I miss him so much it hurts. But sometimes, I suddenly feel overwhelmed, like I'm going to cry. Or like there's this deep regret in my chest. Maybe I should have been honest with Frank back then and told him everything face to face." Seeing I was getting anxious, Henry gently placed his hands on my shoulders and said firmly, "Let's sit and talk." After I sat down, he poured me a cup of hot water. "What kind of instability are we talking about?" he asked, holding the cup. I answered carefully. "I keep thinking about my former alpha." He glanced at my belly. "The father of the baby?" I paused, then nodded. Henry's voice was calm and steady. "Don't worry. What you're experiencing is a common symptom for omegas during pregnancy when they're deprived of alpha pheromones. Back in the day, if not managed properly, it could be a serious issue. But now, We can use extracted pheromone supplements to suppress the heat symptoms and stabilize emotions. Or, he trailed off for a second. You could ask a reliable alpha to help soothe your agitation, just lightly. If you don't mind, I could do it for you. Because if an alpha misjudges the dosage, it can cause allergic reactions. That's due to a rejection response caused by lingering pheromones from a previously marked omega. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or more worried. If I just tough it out, will it affect the baby? I asked. Henry answered honestly. If your nutrition is on track, it usually won't harm the baby directly. The main concern is how uncomfortable you'll be. It'll be exhausting. Your body might not be able to keep up. Sure. These are statistical risks, but they're still risks worth paying attention to. He sighed. That's one of the reasons I advised against this in the first place. But you. He stopped himself mid-sentence. But I didn't agree with him back then. 2. I grew up in a welfare home in the lower district. Right before the new year, a gang of drifters broke in and looted the place. A lot of people got hurt. One of them was my younger brother, who used to stick to me all the time. And the other was a little Omega girl whose gland was injured. They were the most seriously hurt. The so-called charity organizations in the lower district are shady as hell. Even though they chipped in a bit, the money barely covered part of the surgery, let alone the aftercare costs. That's when I set my sights on the son of a prominent figure who often came to the lower district for charity work. But only after I got involved with Frank did I realize that prominent figure was just one of his family's employees. Frank's real status was way higher than I thought. At first, I was only in it for the money. I never meant to catch feelings. But I didn't expect Frank to be so innocent. He blushed just from holding hands. Thinking about that now made my nose sting out of nowhere. I quickly forced down the emotion and gave an awkward smile. Well, it's a free baby after all. Henry. You wouldn't understand, my alpha was the best-looking alpha I've ever seen. Realizing I was talking to another alpha, I hurriedly added, "You're the second best-looking." Didn't really sound like a compliment. I gave a guilty laugh. Henry chuckled too. All right. My pheromones will only soothe your mood a bit, nothing intense. Don't worry. There's no need to bite into your gland or anything intimate. Henry had always been professional and respectful. So when he said that, I didn't play coy. I just nodded. But as soon as he released just a trace of his pheromones, I immediately felt my body reject it. My face went pale in an instant. He frowned. If we can help it. I don't recommend medication. The meds are brutal on omega glands. Ideally, getting pheromones from your alpha would be best. Back then, whenever I got into fights, I came here to have my injuries treated. Over time, I got pretty familiar with Dr. Henry. I'd been gone for almost a year. They had no idea where I went, what kind of people I met. They just knew I sent money regularly. They didn't know anything about what kind of person my alpha was. Trying to get Frank's pheromones now? Yeah. That's a long shot. Not to mention I didn't exactly leave on good terms. I didn't even dare to show my face in front of him. This is tough. Guess I'll just grit my teeth and push through. Eat better. Take care of myself. I left the small clinic with both hands stuffed into my pockets, planning to go eat at Gary's place. He had torn a tendon in his hand. It was barely saved. But he probably wouldn't be able to draw again. We went to a big hospital in the upper district. They said if he wanted to draw again, he'd need another surgery. But the success rate wasn't high. And it would cost a lot. I had transferred him a sum, But he didn't want to accept it. I had to force him to take it. And even then, he still hadn't gone. The first time he and our little sister needed surgery, I had the orphanage director cover the cost up front. Nobody dared ask where I got the money. Gary always thought I gave up a lot for them. But really, I didn't. Frank was the one who paid. He even gave me his body. Even though Frank was rough in bed. 3. I had just left the clinic when my phone rang. Bro. I started cooking. When are you getting here? I replied lazily. What's the rush? Gary is like a brother to me, we've always had each other's backs in the lower district. Ha! I'm just excited. Waiting on you. I'm almost there. As I said that, I suddenly stopped walking. My eyes narrowed, instinctively scanning the street across from me. The lower district is messy. Lots of people lurking around. Even stalkers. I'm not someone to mess with around here, usually. No one dares follow me. But I could feel it, someone staring holes into my back. That prickling, dangerous sensation had me on high alert. I looked around. But the passers-by were all in a hurry. No one seemed suspicious. I picked up my pace and turned into a side alley. The footsteps behind me came and went. My heart was pounding. I gripped the folding knife in my pocket tightly. As soon as someone stepped into the alley behind me, I turned and slashed. But the guy was clearly prepared. He disarmed me in a couple of moves, but not without getting a solid kick from me. He stumbled back a step and didn't come at me again. Instead, he lowered his head respectfully towards someone behind me. Young master. My pupils shrank. I spun around. It gets dark fast in the lower district. The sky was already dusky. From another alley entrance, a man walked in, so good-looking it was almost unreal. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, covered with a sleek, high-end trench coat. The very image of elegance. But his presence was overwhelming. His sharp features were cold and intimidating. And the look in his eyes was icy and indifferent. The face I knew so well, completely stripped of the warmth it once had. He didn't belong in this place. The aura he brought with him made the dingy alley almost look brighter. My breath caught. In a hoarse voice, I said, Frank? His cold gaze dropped to my stomach. His expression didn't change. It was as if seeing me stirred nothing in him, only a distant, uncaring detachment. Meanwhile, I flushed red, unsure if it was from shock or some messy wave of panic. 4. Why is he here? I instinctively sucked in my belly and stepped back, watching him take one step after another toward me. My hair practically stood on end. I turned and bolted. Shit. If he catches me, I don't even know how I'll die. Chills shot up the back of my neck. This was not how I imagined running into Frank again. Suddenly, a few large men stepped in to block my way. I turned again, and Frank was already close. The sound of his shoes clicking sharply against the pavement. He grabbed me by the arms. His voice was ice cold. Where exactly are you trying to run off to? Edward? That cold, hateful look in his eyes, it wasn't rage anymore. It was loathing. A bitter, emotionless disgust. He practically lifted me off the ground. His grip on my arms hurt like hell. My face went pale. But I didn't make a sound. Frank caught a whiff of a scent that didn't belong to him. His voice turned razor sharp. Wow. Already moved on. Couldn't even behave yourself after leaving me. I froze. I didn't realize Henry's pheromones were still lingering on me. I blurted out. I didn't. Oh. Really? He sneered. He didn't push the issue but started dragging me toward my place. My scalp tingled. He knew where I lived. There was no way I could keep the pregnancy a secret anymore. My mind was a mess. By the time we reached my front door, my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. My legs almost gave out. Frank caught me in his arms before I collapsed. He pulled the keys out of my pocket and opened the door. Several bodyguards stood outside. As soon as the door closed, his alpha pheromones filled the entire space. My mouth went dry. Frank. Listen to me. He didn't. He covered my mouth, touched me, and laughed coldly. You're just as loose as ever. What? Can't survive without a man. I knew he was just trying to hurt me with those words. But it still stung. My eyes burned. He never used to speak to me like this. Even if we met in a bar, even if I was just a server, he always treated me gently. Like a proper gentleman. I shook my head. No. That's not it. Even though I felt hurt, I still couldn't help but lean into him. His scent, his pheromones, were too comforting. How did you find me? Frank? He didn't answer. Didn't even ask why I'd vanished or how I ended up in the lower district. He just stared down at me, watching me squirm weakly against him. Frank. It had been so long since I smelled his pheromones. My head was spinning. Alpha pheromones are overwhelming, and mine were weak to begin with. Just a trace was enough to make me submit completely. He never used to overpower people like this. But now, it was too much. I gasped. It's too much. Frank held me with one hand, glanced at my tiny, broken down apartment. This is where you ended up after leaving me. My legs gave out. I dropped to my knees. He caught me in time and picked me up. I clung to his neck, dazed, and pressed a kiss to the corner of his eye. What are you saying? I don't understand. Frank's breath caught. He kicked open the bedroom door, it cracked with a loud snap. He didn't hold back. My pheromones were tempting him. And he didn't try to control himself. His movements were rough, completely disregarding how I felt. He looked at me with blazing eyes. Edward. The way you act. It's like you're asking for it. I tried to resist. Tears slipped down my cheeks. My hair stuck to my flushed face. Don't do this. I covered my stomach with both hands. Frank yanked my hands away. What are you hiding? What? Something shameful? His bloodshot eyes were filled with something I couldn't quite tell, more hate or more desire. His pheromones seeped into every inch of the room. 5. The next morning, Frank's assistant had already delivered clean clothes, some nutrient solutions, and alpha suppressants stored in a small cooler. On the table sat a warm breakfast. Frank's tall, broad figure made this cramped rental feel even smaller. He sat down on the worn sofa, which immediately dipped in awkwardly, startling him a bit. What kind of cheap spring sofa is this? As someone raised in luxury, he had clearly never stayed somewhere this rundown before. The contrast only made his mood worse. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got, and the darker his expression became. He recalled the image from last night, the Omega cradling his stomach, tears falling silently. Something about that look triggered a sharp, frustrated response in him. He had snapped. What are you crying for? So delicate. Frank had wanted to say worse things. To act out. To pour out all the fury he'd been bottling up. For being lied to. For being abandoned. For being left behind without a word. None of that felt forgivable. And he was still angry. But he wasn't the kind of alpha who lost control. Even in his frustration, there was restraint, and maybe something else. So in the end, he only did the minimum. He stood by the broken window. A cigarette just lit. When the old bedroom door creaked open, he instinctively snuffed it out. "Why are you out?" he snapped. I stood there, face flushed and legs weak, whispering, "I'm hungry." Frank's jaw tensed. "There's food on the table." When I didn't move, he sneered. "What? You waiting for me to feed you like before?" I gave a small smile. "No. I just wanted to eat with you." Frank crushed the cigarette into powder between his fingers. "I'm not falling for your act anymore. Edward. Let me make this clear, I'm here for the child. Not for you. Whatever we were. It ended the day you left." My chest tightened. My breathing turned shallow. But I forced a smile. "I get it. Still, let's have breakfast together. I'm not pretending we're still something." He didn't answer. Just turned to leave. I quickly reached out and grabbed his hand. "Wait." He turned around. Eyes cold and guarded. I stared at his chest, light scratches still visible, and mumbled, "Put some clothes on before you go." He was still wearing a silky robe. Soft and loose. Clearly, the young master had packed well for this trip. The belt hung lazily from his waist, revealing a toned chest and long legs. Looking like that, he'd definitely attract the attention of other Omegas. He shook me off. The door opened. Slammed shut, bam. Even the bodyguards and assistant outside were startled by his sudden exit. 6. I sat at the table, unmoving. For some reason, emotions swelled uncontrollably, and a tear splashed onto the table. I quickly wiped it away. Damn it, what was there to cry about? Embarrassing. It takes a lot of paperwork for someone from the lower district to live in the upper district. If you can't hold a steady job, they won't let you stay long. Back then, I worked as a part-time bartender. Frank had come to celebrate a friend's birthday. I was one of the servers assigned to their private booth. The manager had chosen me because I looked decent and worked hard. I thought Frank and his friends were typical rich kids. So I had this idea, if they were all just fooling around, maybe I could get close to Frank and ask for help. But to my surprise, the group spent the night talking about dreams, philosophy, stock prices, and battle matches. It was all way over my head. I glanced discreetly at the most attractive alpha in the room. I'd seen him before, at charity events in the lower district. Our orphanage director always had me assist during such functions. I might not have a degree, but I was one of the more cultured ones in our area. Frank was always surrounded by people. His identity kept discreet. Even the director had never really seen his face. But I'd once caught a glimpse of him when I happened to deliver something to the VIP lounge, just a sliver through a door that hadn't fully closed. He wore a black tuxedo, skin pale as snow, and features so handsome it was like looking at a dream. His every movement exuded nobility. In that moment, I finally understood the phrase, "a light in a dark place." He looked right at me. "Who's there?" Our eyes met, and my heart skipped. I bolted with the box in hand. Seconds later, I heard his bodyguard rush over. "Sir. What's wrong?" "Who was that?" "Just one of the delivery staff." I didn't catch the rest. Later that night, in a room filled with expensive tech, donated by Frank's family, I muttered to myself, "Must be nice to be rich." When we met again, I was nervous. I knew I'd approached him deliberately. Frank was sitting under the club's flickering neon lights, his gaze soft and serene. After the orphanage incident, when no charity organization stepped in, Frank was the only person I thought to turn to. Why him? Maybe it was because he looked kind, pure. Almost. Turns out, kind people are often the easiest to hurt. I've never been a good person. Grew up on lies and survival. At first, I just wanted to borrow some money. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. Even if he seemed approachable, he was still a young master. So I poured drinks for him all night. He couldn't hold his liquor, so I drank in his place. Frank's friends were shocked. They wanted to call me off, but Frank just laughed. It's all right. He's cute, looks familiar. Then he glanced at me, still trying to serve politely, and said warmly, I can handle my liquor. You don't need to drink for me. But your face is all red. He noticed the cheap lace suppressant collar around my neck. Omega. I smiled shyly. It's fine. After a short pause, Frank shifted inward and patted the seat beside him. If you don't mind, sit here. Of course I didn't mind. I sat down right away. Everyone glanced at me, but didn't say much. They just figured I was part of Frank's current amusement. It was unusual though. Frank had always been well disciplined. Even in college, he'd never had an Omega. Someone like him must have had no shortage of admirers. And yet, he let someone like me sit right next to him. No matter how calm his friends tried to seem, I could feel their curiosity. Still, they didn't make things hard for me. 7. Playing drinking games is mostly about luck. Tonight, Frank wasn't having much of it. He lost a few rounds. Before he could even reach for his drink, I grabbed it and downed it in one gulp, raising an eyebrow and flashing him a proud look. Frank couldn't help but laugh. I really can handle my liquor. You don't need to drink for me. I just said, oh. He had a few more drinks after that. Although I didn't understand their conversations. It wasn't anything secretive. Frank got up to use the restroom, and I followed him. At the bathroom door, the alpha looked at me helplessly. Are you coming in with me? I suddenly collapsed against him. A bit clumsy. Instinctively, he wrapped his arms around my waist but then stiffened. A faint scent of ebony rose mingled with rose fragrance clung to him in delicate wisps. Frank felt himself growing hotter. Even though he should have loosened his grip, he held me tighter. Suddenly, he covered his neck with his hand. Sorry. I'm in my sensitive phase. He was affected by the Omega pheromones. But Frank thought if it weren't for his sensitive phase approaching, he wouldn't have reacted so strongly. So he blamed himself. I'm calling someone to take you home, he said. Brow furrowed. For now. Go lock the bathroom door. Frank wasn't sure if my pheromones might attract trouble. His gaze deepened. I hugged his waist and pushed him gently toward a stall in the bathroom. He blinked, hoarsely asking, What are you doing? I tilted my head up, face flushed and warm. I want you to bite me. I tore off the lace suppressant collar, exposing my neck for him. A temporary mark. Frank's Adam's apple bobbed, his deep eyes fixed on my pale neck. Without hesitation, he bit down. My pupils shrank as I was overwhelmed by fire and ice. Our pheromones mixed and twisted together, ebony rose wrapped in the scent of alcohol. Half dazed, I thought. No wonder he said he had a strong tolerance for drinks. He called someone to pick me up. holding me as we left. To Frank. An Omega freshly marked can't safely leave the Alpha's side, it's too dangerous. But in the car, I hooked my arm around his neck and slowly leaned over. He was warm and restless but eventually took his jacket and draped it over me. Softly, he said, "Sorry. I'm taking you to the hospital." I grabbed the messy collar of his shirt. "Can I come home with you?" Afraid he hadn't heard me clearly, I pressed my lips to his ear, whispering, "Can I come home with you?" The meaning was obvious. At Frank's place in the city. The moment we stepped inside, my pheromones uncontrollably spilled out. I was drunk and flushed from the Alpha's scent. He couldn't resist and pressed a soft kiss to my lips. And then everything spiraled out of control. But after he pinned me to the bed, Frank suddenly snapped awake. He pulled the blanket over me. I blinked my moist eyes. "What's wrong?" He kissed my glands softly. "Sorry." Then he stood and left. The air around me felt lighter, it was as if the Alpha had taken all the heat away. I shivered, looking around. The place was clean and beautiful. This was the young master I'd seduced with pheromones. Thinking of his reaction made me smirk. So interesting. 8. Late at night. I was sleeping soundly when my neck was lightly licked. I hummed a few times and slipped back into the comfortable sleep. There was a faint scent of alcohol, light, fruity, with a floral note. The next morning, we woke up staring at each other. "Sorry. I want money." We said it at the same time. He looked surprised. "What?" A bit embarrassed. I said, "If I told you I'm marked by you and want money, would you think I'm a bad person?" Frank shook his head automatically. No. He hadn't slept the night before. He'd come over late. And an Alpha in the sensitive phase marking an Omega can feel possessive. Holding me helped him sleep better. Now, suddenly, he loosened his arm around my waist. I shamelessly explained. "You know, Omegas become very dependent after being marked. I might have to isolate for a couple days. If I had money, I wouldn't have to work those places. So I hope you can compensate for my loss. Besides, you're the first to mark me. I'm clean. Don't worry." I was nervous asking so openly. Scared he might hit me and kick me out. Frank was silent for a moment. "Okay. I'll transfer it now. How much do you want?" 200,000, okay. Or is that too little? That's enough. I opened the payment app. Added a note, gift with no strings attached. He was surprised again but laughed. "Can I at least get a friend request?" I dared not look him in the eye. "Sure." That day, not wanting him to lose out, I let him bite my neck once more before leaving. Back in my tiny basement apartment, all I could think about was Frank. The young master had been set up but still sent money with a smile. I'd thought if he'd hit me, I'd stop pretending to be weak. I was right about him. Frank was noble and dignified. Lying on my narrow bed, I sent money to the orphanage director. After putting down my phone, I rolled over, pulled the covers over my face, hiding my smile. Since then, he always reserved a private booth at that bar and asked me to accompany him. He had high standards for drinks, ordering mostly for me to earn commissions. He hardly touched any of it, saving it for friends who might stop by. Sometimes, he gave me extra for taking up my work time. I accepted it gladly. At night, he'd walk me home. On the crowded bus, I looked at the distinguished Alpha and tried to shield him from the crowd. But he grabbed my waist, pulling me in front of him. whispering in my ear. "Edward. You can hold on to me." He'd never taken a bus before. But he wasn't stupid. When someone grabbed the overhead rail, he used his height to create a little space, sheltering me. I held him tight. When the bus swayed, he didn't move at all. It felt so safe. I breathed in his wonderful scent, a happiness that wasn't mine, but made my heart race. Outside my apartment, I didn't invite him in. If we'd just met, I'd have taken him in without hesitation, shown him my place, and begged for sympathy money. But this time, he walked me to the door, and I felt ashamed. I didn't want him to see me so helpless and broken. "See you tomorrow." I was about to turn when he called. "Edward. Want to come to my school?" My eyes widened, and I nodded excitedly. "Sure." Under the street lamp, Frank's gaze was soft and bright. "I'll come get you tomorrow." 9. His school was huge and beautiful, far more magnificent than anything in the lower district. I was curious about everything. And naturally, he took my hand and even showed me his dorm. Though Frank didn't spend much time there. The day we officially became a couple was the same day he confessed to me with a bouquet of roses. In a grand way with many friends around. Joy clouded my mind. But deep down, I kept telling myself I only agreed to be with him for the money. Maybe that could ease the anxiety and insecurity caused by our wildly different statuses. When I said yes, I felt like crying. That night, he pinned me to the bed and marked me, revealing the primal fierceness of an alpha. "Edward. I'm so happy." It actually hurt a little at first, but I endured it. I am happy too." Frank's eyes turned blood red. And in a hoarse voice, he said, "Good boy." I broke down, sobbing quietly. Not long after quitting the bar, I got a job at an expensive bakery. I transferred money regularly to the orphanage director and Gary, but said nothing else. On the day Frank confessed, his brothers were happy for him, but no one thought we'd last. I was from the lower district, and Frank hadn't checked my background, only his parents did. In the car, Kara, elegant and poised, frowned when she sensed the alpha pheromones on me. "You're getting close to my son for money." I nervously twisted my fingers and looked down. Silent. "He's recently been spending time with an Omega he gets along with." I snapped my head up. "What? Didn't you notice Frank's been coming home late?" The woman spoke coldly. "We don't care much about social status. But your gap is huge. He's attracted to the novelty now. But over time, things will get messy. And since your motives aren't pure." She softened. "Child." Frank's mild-tempered, but not stupid. He tolerates the lies because he likes you. But when his destined mate appears, lies become the sharpest blade. It won't end well for anyone. All I heard clearly was, "Destined mate?" Frank's mother looked out the window, sighing. "The pheromone compatibility is over 99%. One glance, and they're drawn to each other. I came to warn you, to know your limits. I don't want Frank's father involved. You're just a kid." Dazed, I asked, "Then how do I leave?" "No. Auntie. Please give me a few more days." Those days, I clung tightly to Frank. When he came home, I'd bury my face in him, sniffing. Our first fight was because of another Omega's scent on him. It was unavoidable. Sometimes when I was around crowds or emergencies, I'd carry other scents too, let alone Frank, who was always in the spotlight. too many walked beside him. I wasn't the only one. I smashed the greasy food he brought back. Frustrated. Let's break up. Frank was stressed with some issues but felt it was worth it to come home to me. Even though his Omega was upset. It showed he cared. His possessiveness flared. Holding me. He soothed. I'm sorry. I wasn't good enough. Don't break up. Baby. I love you. I buried my face in his chest. Silently crying. Don't say sorry. It's my fault. That night. I was wild. Clinging to him. Frank nearly lost control and tried to mark me for life. Sensing something amiss. With a warning. He teased. Don't leave me. Edward. I'd go crazy. But the next day. There was a car accident. Someone drove off an overpass into the sea. I didn't know much then, I'd already been forcibly taken back to the lower district. Arranged by Frank's mother. No matter what. My leaving was seen as betrayal. Abandonment. Unforgivable, and done so disgracefully. I truly regretted it. I should have said goodbye properly. Now. He hated me. 10. I dared not think deeply about the time with Frank. Every time I dreamed. I woke up feeling empty. I was momentarily distracted but slowly picked up my chopsticks for breakfast. Though my heart ached. My body felt fine. The kid was unusually well behaved today. I didn't know when Frank would return. Around noon. Someone brought me lunch. James. Where's Frank? The James I'd met whispered. In the car downstairs. I was startled. James continued. The young master can't stay here long. He has work to handle and is probably deciding whether to take you with him. It wasn't about forcing me to leave or asking for my opinion, he was still deciding if he wanted me back in the upper district. It felt like I really wasn't that important. My heart tightened. I returned to my room in silence. In the afternoon. Feeling sleepy. Frank quietly picked me up and carried me downstairs. My eyelids were heavy. I smelled the familiar fruity wine scent and barely opened my eyes. Where are we going? Frank's expression was cold. He didn't answer. I feared he'd abandon me. But I was also scared to leave with him. I'd have nowhere to go then. Hurriedly. I said. When I left before. I took a lot of your money. Your family doesn't approve of us seeing each other. Frank. I'm just a plain Omega. I grew up in an orphanage and never learned well. Back then. I was jealous of you. At first glance. The alpha was handsome. Noble. Untouchable, but somehow. You couldn't stop looking at him. I struggled. I was bad. Deliberately using pheromones to lure you. Even if you had marked me for life back then. I'd have just thought it was a good deal. That's how terrible an Omega I am. Frank suddenly stopped walking. In the narrow alley. He was alone with me. He looked down at me briefly and kept going. His tense jaw sharp and smooth. Do you think saying all this will soften me? It won't. You have to leave with me now. After the baby's born. You can go. My nose stung. But stubbornly. My heart warmed. He clearly softened, otherwise. I wouldn't have said those things. We returned to the upper district. It was already 6 or 7 in the evening. The private jet was fast. I was exhausted and slept deeply. With Frank carrying me into the room. The nutritionist and doctor who had been following us came forward for a quick checkup. After confirming I was fine. They left one by one. 11. Frank was a bit tired too. He had a cup of coffee and continued working in his study. handling the tasks he hadn't focused on recently. When his father called personally, Frank didn't answer. He only replied to his mother's message. And after that, his father didn't call again. After finishing some work, Frank came out of the study and saw the round-bellied Omega standing barefoot at the door. He was startled. I trembled, just hesitating whether to knock when Frank suddenly opened the door. His brows furrowed as he picked me up and coldly took me back to the room. "Why aren't you wearing shoes? Trying to make me worry?" Frank snapped angrily. "Edward, I don't love you anymore. The only one I care about now is my child." I hurried to reassure him. "I know. Don't worry. The baby's perfectly healthy, I've had all the checks." Frank's anger flared even more as he put me on the bed. "Yes. You're just a low-status Omega from the lower district. You deceived my feelings. But you were forced into it. Even if you loved me, you had to leave in the end. Believe whatever they say, you're the most pitiful. The most innocent. Is that enough?" My eyes burned. My throat tightened. "Please. Don't talk to me like that. Edward. You never truly loved me." Frank said coldly. "Me neither. When the baby's born, I'll give you a good sum to send you away, back to your lower district. To your Dr. Henry." My eyes stung with tears, barely holding them back. I lowered my head. "Could you maybe give me a little more? Maybe then I could become rich. And we'd be equal. Then I could chase you." Frank was speechless, neither angry nor calm, and finally slammed the door shut with little force. I sat awkwardly for a while until Auntie came in gently asking where I wanted to eat and brought me some comfy slippers. It wasn't that Auntie wasn't considerate, Frank just didn't want too many people around me. In the past 6 months, Frank had changed a lot. No one dared to come in without his permission. I asked, "Auntie, where's Frank?" "He's downstairs in the greenhouse. I want to see him," Auntie gently said. "The young master told me to have you eat first." I nodded and said, "Okay." After I finished eating, Frank returned. "I ate too much," I whispered, sneaking a glance at the person ignoring me. The little one inside kicked me. The alpha showed no interest and went to the bathroom. The baby was an accident, he didn't care that much. I lay in bed, sighing. I should have broken up properly back then. Disappearing suddenly. Saying nothing. Thinking there was no ending, I thought Frank would hate me for approaching him with bad intentions. So I took some money and slipped away. Honestly, I just wanted to get more money at that time. I was practical, not wanting to get in the way of Frank finding his destined mate, and selfish. Keeping some of the money he gave me when I returned to the lower district. Even if I gave some away, I'd still live comfortably. After Frank finished washing, he came to bed. I slowly moved into his arms, then sat on him, blushing as I asked, "Do you want me?" Frank frowned. "Get off." He wasn't an animal. Last night he was angry, okay. Maybe a bit animalistic, but he consulted a doctor beforehand. So it was okay. I grabbed his hand and placed it on my chest. "Hubby, I miss you." Frank's Adam's apple moved sharply, looking at me, still thin, but with a rosy face and better spirits these days. He was annoyed. He was supposed to torment me, not be pleased. His hand pressed down lightly and then helped me off him. "Get some rest. And don't call me hubby." I lay down and grabbed him. "Hubby." Frank gasped sharply. 12. He wouldn't let me leave. So out of boredom, I watered the flowers in his greenhouse. There were many kinds of roses, so beautiful. But mostly, I just lay on the sofa, spacing out, not knowing what I was thinking about. These days, Frank went out early and came back late, barely paying attention to me. He didn't even tease me anymore. How boring. One night when he came back, I happily went to greet him, then I smelled another Omega scent on him. Sweet like milk candy. A familiar scent. My expression changed, and I froze. His look was subtle. I held back from saying anything. But when he got closer, I quickly said, "My stomach hurts a bit. I'm going to lie down. No need to call the doctor." Then I turned and left. Frank's expression didn't change. Back in the bedroom, I stared at my phone for a while. Gary messaged, asking how I was doing. I hadn't gone to eat that day but explained via text and told them when I left. I replied perfunctorily, feeling deeply powerless inside. Frank came in after showering. I was already asleep. But this time I didn't snuggle close. There was still some distance between us. "If you have another Omega, can you let me go?" I said, feeling a bit annoyed at myself for not softening up and saying something nicer to calm him. After a long pause, Frank said, "Oh." I was confused. "Oh what? When do you want to leave? Tomorrow or now?" I got up, ready to get out of bed. Frank sat up angrily. "What's all this noise at night?" I took a deep breath and turned to look at him. "So what do you mean?" "Yes. I was wrong, I shouldn't have left without a word." "But Frank, haven't you made mistakes too?" Frank was stunned. "Yes. I was wrong." I was confused. Wasn't this an argument? Frank was serious. "I shouldn't have respected you by not checking your info or hiding things from my family. Putting invisible pressure on you. But I don't have a destined mate. I won't fall for someone else over a little pheromone. If you don't believe me, I'll let you go." Frank got up. "Go lie down. I'll stay in the spare room from now on." I immediately followed. "Why did you get someone else's pheromones on you?" He glanced at me. "Your so-called destined mate rushed to the company to confront me using pheromones to make me lose control. Some got on me. I called the police. And his family sent him to the hospital." Then Frank added, "I have no contact with that guy. His pheromones are messed up. He refuses treatment and came to me. I'm not his alpha. Even if the compatibility is 100%. So what? It doesn't help at all. And it's treatable. Annoying." Frank looked grim. Seeing me silent, he impatiently said, "Don't believe it if you don't want." "No. I'm just a little jealous. My pheromones are weak. I'm poor and unrefined. But I have high standards. I'm trying to change." "Sorry." Frank stayed cold. "Last time you had some doctor's pheromones on you." "Edward. Just because you think you're the weaker one doesn't mean you can do whatever you want." I explained. "It's because without your pheromones, my stomach and glands hurt. And my emotions fluctuate. Dr. Henry said the medicine isn't good for me. So I lightly used pheromones to calm down. We kept our distance. And I resisted it. But then you came that day, so nice of you." Frank's expression softened a bit. I pulled him toward bed. "Don't stay in the spare room. I can't live without you." I blushed but continued. "I sleep better with you beside me." Frank's expression was faint. But not cold anymore. Unconsciously, I'd been here 2 or 3 months. Lately, Frank rarely worked overtime and came home on time. He looked thinner. Worried about something unknown. Fortunately, his muscles were still strong and nice to touch. At night, I always asked him, "When did you find me? Were you angry at first? Did you want to get back at me? Did you ever think it'd be better if I just disappeared? Frank, do you still love me?" I asked one question every few days. He patiently answered, "A month before I caught you. That doctor meant you harm. Don't contact him again." I was very angry. "No. I wasn't. Why disappear? You owe me and you must pay." I frowned. "What does mean?" Frank didn't answer. I grabbed his hand and placed it on my belly. "I love you," selfishly. Frank curled his fingers around mine and held me close, softly saying, "I know." 13. The day the baby was born. I lay in the hospital bed. My damp hair stuck to my face. Exhausted. I asked him, "Are you still going to send me away?" Frank held my hand. His eyes bloodshot and watery. Choking on his words. "I'm sorry, brother. That was just anger talking. Would asking him now just hurt him? I did it on purpose." I fell asleep. His parents came to visit. And Frank looked displeased, glancing at the scruffy baby and sighing deeply. Frank's mother was much happier. That car accident was just a warning from Frank's father. Edward's leaving made Frank depressed for a while. But once he thought it through, he knelt before his mother. "Mom, I really like him. Edward is good, he's my Omega." Kara pulled the baby up and said, "Frank, you can have many things because of your status. But you can't just have whoever you want, unless you have real power over your father." So Frank never dared to stop. During the month he found Edward. He secretly visited the lower district a few times. Watching Edward wear cheap t-shirts and shorts, flip-flops on his feet, laughing and slinging his arm around others. It made him so angry. But no matter how much he tried, the curve of Edward's belly couldn't be hidden. His friends told him not to burden himself. Edward wasn't happy. "It's a surprise. I'm making big money. So don't say that." But some friends supported him. That beta with the injured hand foolishly smiled and said, "I'll support him." Frank got even angrier. Sometimes Edward would see a scene and suddenly start crying. Then lock himself at home for days. He grew thinner and thinner. But his belly kept getting bigger. Frank couldn't wait anymore. He simply took Edward away and said they'd deal with everything later. After all, Edward wouldn't have it worse being with him. The baby was a girl. The doctor said she was very likely an Omega. She was so incredibly cute. Frank's father would hold Bella in his arms while working. And sometimes even during unimportant meetings. He insisted on having her nearby. When Kara came to pick them up, she'd complain. "Frank and the others don't understand, they always leave the baby with him." Kara, looking indifferent, picked up Bella. "If you don't want to take her, I'll bring her, so you don't have to come pick her up before work is over." Frank's dad steadied her by the waist and said, "I'll handle it." He glanced at his wife's expression and felt relieved. They were the so-called destined mates. But their feelings had always been ordinary. He was used to being strong and controlling. Only after Frank got married did their relationship soften a bit. 14. With the baby not around, I didn't really miss anything. What mattered was that I needed to improve. I gradually opened several bakeries and learned about investing. After making money, I donated to the orphanage and invested in the lower district myself. Not to mention, I made a good profit, mainly because policies in the lower district were changing. Issues like public safety improved a lot. One day when Frank came home from work, I was lying on the sofa studying and jumped up as soon as he opened the door. I threw myself into his arms. "Hubby, you're home." Frank hugged me tightly, a smile in his eyes, and kissed my cheek. One day, I suddenly remembered the day we reunited. It looked like he was holding a cigarette between his fingers, but I never saw him smoke afterward. So I didn't think much of it. Later, I learned he did pick up smoking for a while, but quit quickly. One night, after being exhausted from everything, I mumbled half asleep, "Frank, I love you, brother." Frank held me close and said gently, "I love you more."